talking about, before we get to the point, we have to understand what the reality is.
Yeah.
When Shedeur does anything, it's always critique.
At that position, no matter where you rank on any kind of depth chart as a quarterback, everything you do and say is a job interview. In the NFL, every moment. I think the second thing is this. That 30 or 40 seconds, Stephen A., while he may not be an immature person, that's an immature moment. It is. Because does that 30 or 40 seconds help you in your own building?
We'll see. Shedeur, I definitely believe it.
The controversies surrounding Shedeur Sanders are just spiraling out of control once more. Shedeur is also being criticized this time for his mock interview. He decided to use gestures to convey his message during this interview, subtly alluding to the likelihood that everything he says could be misconstrued and used against him in the NFL. To be honest, he has a point. He is now again the subject of an intensifying media frenzy.
Sanders understands that every little thing he does is under a microscope because of who your dad is.
Let's begin. The media frenzy intensified as soon as the video became viral, and Shedeur Sanders once more encountered conflicting responses from the press and pundits. But unlike most others, Stephen A. Smith used a different tack and refrained from condemning Shedeur. Rather, he provided some insightful counsel. Shedeur was reminded by Stephen A. of his special status, emphasizing that his relationship with Deion Sanders will put him under close observation in all he does. He made it apparent that Shedeur was comprehend the increased scrutiny and demands that accompany being Deion's son in the public eye. However, Dan Orlovsky was unreserved in his criticism of Shedeur Sanders, labeling those 40 seconds of his miming as childish. He made the point that playing quarterback in the NFL is a difficult profession, with every move being closely watched and potentially used against you. Orlovsky pushed Shedeur to consider whether those 40 seconds would truly help him in the long run, particularly in terms of his development and standing on the squad. He stated unequivocally that the emphasis should be on things that promote Shedeur's growth rather than things that could impede it.
No matter where you rank on any kind of depth chart as a quarterback, everything you do and say is a job interview. In the NFL, every moment. I think the second thing is this. That 30 or 40 seconds, Stephen A., while he may not be an immature person, that's an immature moment. It is. Because does that 30 or 40 seconds help you in your own building?
However, Ryan Clark adopted a more thorough stance, contending that the criticism directed at Shedeur Sanders is unjustified. He emphasized that since Shedeur is the only third-string quarterback in the league getting media attention and being asked what he needs to do to start, he lacks experience and a clear template for how to behave in these circumstances. Clark underlined that there is no justification for criticizing Shedeur for managing things the way he has because he is still a young quarterback who is under a lot of public pressure. Ryan Clark continued after that. He continued by saying that Shedeur's behavior is a normal response to unjust criticism. He clarified that Shedeur is only reacting to the pressure after being under so much scrutiny. Shedeur, as instructed by Clark, was to stand back and thoroughly consider the circumstances, comprehending the consequences of his actions while negotiating the harsh limelight. He urged him to keep his eyes on the important things and to think about how his response to the criticism and attention would affect him in the long run.
It's also a part for Shedeur Sanders that all of this, the scrutiny, the way he's criticized, the wording that's used is unfair to him.
Since Shedeur Sanders has been the subject of harsh criticism for things that weren't actually all that bad, let's face it, Clark has a point. Shedeur recently made the audacious assertion that he thinks he is superior to some of the NFL's current quarterbacks. As anticipated, many people were offended by this. Critics immediately jumped in to condemn him for having the audacity to make such a claim, and the backlash was swift. People who believed he was going too far reacted negatively to it in droves.
Overall, this isn't my end goal, I'm just enjoying myself, learning, doing everything I have to do, and just ready for my opportunity.
Shedeur was only attempting to demonstrate that he was prepared to compete, but the media interpreted his remarks in a far more hostile manner and even turned against him.
For example, Shedeur was called out by Rex Ryan, who implied that he wasn't putting in enough effort. The tone Rex adopted, however, was what truly caught our attention. It wasn't a complimentary or helpful criticism. It looked to be intended to elicit a response and was abrasive, bordering on aggressive. This wasn't merely a straightforward critique. It resembled a full-scale assault. This, of course, just served to exacerbate the dispute and feed the flames that were already burning brightly around Shedeur. Cam Newton also voiced his opinion, saying that Shedeur is receiving unfair treatment and that it is acceptable for him to raise concerns about his treatment. Newton claims that this is an unprecedented situation. Shedeur is the only third-string quarterback selected in the 5th round in NFL history to garner such a strong fan base. Newton contends that the reason he is under so much scrutiny is because of this unanticipated attention. He feels that although the attention has been helpful, it has placed Shedeur in a challenging situation and made him the focus of even more pressure and criticism. Cam Newton went on to explain that Shedeur Sanders is constantly the target of excessive criticism, regardless of whether his actions are warranted or not. Newton noted that this isn't the kind of criticism you would anticipate from a young quarterback or rookie. On the contrary, it seems more intense and intimate. He pointed out that even while Shedeur is improving, the attacks are more vicious than those any other player would encounter. Newton feels that the criticism of him goes well beyond what is often expected and that there is an underlying agenda being pushed against him.
It's not even about... Before we get to the point, we have to understand what the reality is.
Yeah.
When Shedeur does anything, it's always critiqued.
To sum up, the circumstances surrounding Shedeur Sanders have devolved into a perfect storm of excessive criticism, high expectations, and media scrutiny. The media and former players, who appear to have their own agendas, have targeted Shedeur, a young, gifted quarterback with enormous promise. What began as a straightforward declaration of his confidence in his own skills has grown into a full-fledged scandal in which every move he makes is scrutinized and condemned. Although Shedeur's self-assurance and faith in his quarterbacking skills may be a normal response to the pressure he's under, it's obvious that the level of scrutiny he endures is unheard of. Shedeur is the first third-string quarterback selected in the 5th round to garner this level of fan support and media attention, as noted by Cam Newton. Because of his special position, he has unavoidably come under scrutiny, with every move he makes receiving more criticism than any other player in his position. Ryan Clark, Dan Orlovsky, and Stephen A. Smith have all provided insightful viewpoints, advising Shedeur to carefully consider his circumstances and be mindful of the additional pressure that comes with being the son of Deion Sanders. But the backlash has only become worse due to the criticism from people like Rex Ryan, who have publicly criticized Shedeur's work ethic. Shedeur Sanders is ultimately a young athlete who is being closely watched. Fans, commentators, and the media must keep in mind that Shedeur is still growing as a player and a person. Even though it's vital to admit that some of the criticism may be justified and take into account the extreme circumstances he endures, he deserves the room to develop free from the ceaseless stream of baseless criticism that seems to follow him everywhere. How do you feel about Shedeur Sanders being under such scrutiny? Do you think he's getting a fair amount of criticism? Or do you believe that his attempts to prove himself are being met with too severe a judgment? Could it be that his relationship with Deion Sanders is causing the media to exaggerate the situation? Or is Shedeur just making things happen to himself with his audacious remarks and deeds? Do you agree with commentators like Ryan Clark and Stephen A. Smith that he needs to pay more attention to the pressure he's under? Or do you believe that the criticism is warranted? Please share your opinions in the comments section below.